My name is Clara Winslow. I'm 38 years old. My father once looked my 8-year-old daughter straight in the eye in front of our entire extended family and told her, "Food is for family members only." By the time those words were spoken, everything that made me believe in our last name was already hanging by a thread. By the time he finished, that thread snapped. But before we get to that moment in the yard, you need to understand who my daughter is and why that sentence didn't just bruise me, it rewired me. Brienne had been practicing for this reunion for weeks, turning our narrow hallway into a little runway of nerves and hope. Every morning, after brushing her teeth, she'd stand in front of the mirror, smooth down the front of her dress, sometimes the yellow one with sunflowers, sometimes the purple one she swore made her look fancy. Draw in a breath and say, "Hi, I'm Brienne Hoffman. I'm 8 years old, and I love horses and chocolate chip cookies." She'd grin at herself, showing off the gap where her front tooth had fallen out a month earlier. Then ask me, "Was that okay, Mom? Do I sound like I belong?" Brienne isn't my biological daughter. I adopted her 2 years ago, when she was 6, after fostering her for 8 months. Before that, she'd been in the system since age 4, passed from house to house like a piece of furniture no one was ready to commit to. Some of those homes meant well. Some of them didn't. She'd been left unfed, unheard, and once, according to her file, alone in a crib. For hours, while her birth mother disappeared into a haze of pills and smoke. When Brienne first came to me, she barely spoke above a whisper, and if someone lifted a hand too fast, just to grab a glass or adjust a curtain, she'd flinch like she expected to be hit. Now she sings in the shower and tapes her artwork all over my refrigerator. There are fingerprints of washable paint on my light switches and stickers on my laptop that will never come off without a fight. She has a laugh that starts in her toes and takes her whole body with it. She also still sleeps with the nightlight on and double checks that I've locked the door before bed, like she needs proof that this home won't disappear like the last ones. My father, Walter, never approved of the adoption. He ran a local branch of First National Bank for 30 years, and he believes the world works in ledgers and categories: assets and liabilities, worthy and unworthy, blood, and everything else. When I told him I was adopting, that I was going through with it, that I had already fallen in love with a little girl who drew horses with wings and asked if love could expire, he didn't congratulate me. He sat back in his chair, steepled his fingers, and said, "Why would you water down our family legacy with someone else's cast-off?" I should have taken that question for the warning it was. I should have recognized in his eyes that this wasn't just reluctance, it was contempt. But some part of me still believed that if he saw her, if he looked directly at the child instead of her file, if he heard her laugh and watched her try too hard to be perfect, something in him would soften. Even the hardest men soften around children, right? At least that's the lie I needed to believe. My mother, Lorraine, was different. She drove down to sit in the courtroom the day the adoption was finalized, dabbing her eyes with a tissue while the judge read the order that made Brienne legally mine. She took screenshots of the decree and printed them like photos. During our weekly video calls, she always asked, "Where's my girl? Let me see my girl." And then she'd talk directly to the screen, telling Brienne stories about the family farm and sending boxes of cookies, small toys, and little notes that said things like, "Every child deserves a grandmother who spoils her." The morning of the reunion, Brienne woke up before my alarm went off. I found her standing in the bathroom in her socks, staring at herself in the mirror with a seriousness that didn't belong on an 8-year-old's face. She was wearing the yellow sundress with tiny sunflowers embroidered along the hem, the one she'd chosen carefully 3 days before, asking, "Do I look like a real granddaughter in this?" "Mom, do you think they'll like me?" she asked as I came in, holding up a comb like a microphone. "Should I wear the yellow or the purple? What if the other kids don't want to play with me?" "Yellow," I said, picking up the comb and starting to part her hair. "You look like sunshine in that one." I began weaving her hair into a French braid, fingers moving from muscle memory after 100 school mornings. "And they're going to love you. How could they not?" Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her dress. "What if Grandpa doesn't? What if he thinks I'm wrong?" Something twisted in my stomach. Walter's words from months ago echoed in my head, cold and sharp. I swallowed them down and met her eyes in the mirror. "You are not wrong," I said. "You are mine. That makes you family. The judge said so. I say so, and anyone who doesn't see that is the one who's wrong, okay? She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe it yet. Children who have been left too many times don't take words at face value. They wait to see what people do. The drive to my parents' property in rural Pennsylvania took 2 hours. Brienne spent most of it pressed against the window, counting red cars, and peppering me with questions. Tell me about Uncle Philip again. Is he really as tall as a basketball player? Will he like horses? Do they have any pets? What about Grandma's potato salad? Does it really have pickles in it? Even taller, I said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. And his boys are going to love having a new cousin to play with. They're wild. You'll fit right in. As we turned onto the long gravel driveway, the familiar red barn came into view, its side freshly painted with our last name and the words "Family Reunion" in big block letters. Dozens of cars were already parked along the fence line. The smell of barbecue smoke floated through the warm air, and the thump of music drifted from the backyard. Brienne's hand found mine as we walked toward the gate, her grip small but fierce. Remember, she whispered under her breath, like she was reciting a spell. I'm Brienne. I belong here. Those words would echo in my mind for weeks afterward, because within 3 hours, my own father would look at that same child and tell her, publicly, that she didn't. The backyard had been transformed into Walter's idea of perfection. He'd been running these reunions like military operations for 15 years, and it showed. White folding tables lined with red and blue balloons, tablecloths ironed within an inch of their lives, a massive buffet table stretching along the patio, groaning under the weight of family recipes. The old red barn had been converted into a party space years ago, strung with lights, a sound system wired to a playlist my father curated himself. He wore a polo shirt tucked into pressed khakis and a laminated reunion committee badge clipped to his collar like a name tag at a conference. Judith, there's my girl, my mother called, using my first name as she hurried across the yard. Her summer dress, the blue one with white flowers she always wore for special occasions, swayed around her knees. She hugged me briefly, then dropped to her knees in front of Brienne. And there's my beautiful granddaughter. Look at you in that dress. You look like sunshine. Brienne straightened, eyes shining. Grandma Lorraine, I practiced my introduction. Want to hear it? I would love nothing more. Brienne took a tiny step back, extended her hand, and delivered her practice line with only a little wobble. Hi, I'm Brienne. I'm 8 years old, and I'm very pleased to meet you. My mother clutched her heart. Perfect, she said. Absolutely perfect. Behind her, Walter stood with a beer in one hand, talking to his brother near the beverage station. He glanced over when he heard my name, his eyes skimming past Brienne like she was part of the scenery. Hello, Dad, I called, forcing warmth into my voice as we approached. Judith, he replied with a curt nod. His gaze flicked to Brienne for a fraction of a second, then away, as if looking at her too long might acknowledge something he didn't want to admit was real. This was the first test, and he'd already failed the eye contact part. Still, I swallowed my unease and told myself it was just awkwardness, that he'd thaw once he had time. Brienne, mercifully, was too distracted by the chaos to notice. The yard was full of people I'd known my entire life. My brother Philip stood at the grill, his 6'4" frame hunched over as he flipped burgers with the intensity of a surgeon. His wife Denise fussed over desserts on a separate table, her famous 7-layer chocolate cake sitting proudly in the center. My sister Karen's 3 boys, Carson, Max, and little Danny, ran through sprinklers with shrieks of joy, their hair plastered to their foreheads. Uncle Theodore held court by the coolers, retelling his fishing story for the 50th time to a circle of relatives who pretended they hadn't heard it before. The air smelled like charcoal smoke, Aunt Patricia's floral perfume, and the sugary warmth of fresh-baked pies. For a while, everything looked exactly how I'd hoped it would look. Brienne got pulled into a game of tag within minutes, her yellow dress quickly acquiring grass stains at the knees. My cousin complimented her outfit. Uncle Theodore performed his disappearing quarter trick for her, and she squealed when he found it behind her ear. She ran through sprinklers with the other kids, her braid coming loose, her laughter indistinguishable from the chorus of cousins. She's fitting in wonderfully, Denise said as we refilled lemonade pitchers together, following my gaze as Brienne tried to outrun Carson around the oak tree. Look how happy she is. I was so worried, I admitted. Dad hasn't exactly been supportive. Walter will come around, she said automatically. How could anyone resist that sweet face? I wanted to believe her. For about 2 hours, I let myself. I let myself breathe. I answered small talk questions, passed around napkins, and watched my daughter move through the chaos as if she'd always been part of it. My hope lasted until Philip walked over to the old brass bell mounted on the barn wall and rang it 3 times. "Everyone, grab a plate," he shouted. "Kids first, then adults. We've got burgers, hot dogs, Grandma's potato salad, corn on the cob, and Aunt Patricia's baked beans." The kids abandoned their games in an instant, stampeding toward the buffet table in a swarm of wet hair and bare feet. Parents trailed behind them, trying to direct traffic. Brienne slipped into the line between Carson and my cousin's daughter Fiona, bouncing on her toes as she craned her neck to see the food. She'd been talking about Grandma's potato salad all morning, asking if she'd be able to taste it first before anyone else eats it all. I stood at the beverage table with my mother, refilling pitchers and watching the line snake its way toward the plates at the start. My chest felt tight with a strange mix of pride and relief. My daughter, my little girl who once hoarded crackers under her pillow, was here, waiting for her turn, just another kid in the line. That's when I saw Walter step away from his conversation and walk with purpose toward the front of the buffet line. At first, I assumed he was going to help. It's what he always did, manage the flow, keep things orderly. He took his position right at the beginning of the table where the paper plates and napkins were stacked. He handed one to Carson with a small smile. "There you go, buddy. Get plenty of food." He handed another to Fiona. "Don't forget the corn, sweetheart. I know it's your favorite." His voice was warm enough for them, the practiced geniality he used with favored customers at the bank. Then Brienne stepped forward and held out her hands for a plate. Walter's fingers tightened around the stack. He pulled it back against his chest, blocking her. "Excuse me, Grandpa," Brienne said, her voice polite and a little breathless from the run. She rose up on her tiptoes to see around him, assuming he just hadn't noticed her. He looked down at her, really looked. Something in his eyes hardened, like a door shutting. From across the yard, I saw the change in his face, and my blood ran cold. Every conversation seemed to slow. The sizzle of the grill, the chatter at the tables, the clink of ice in pitchers, all of it faded beneath the sharp, awful awareness that something was about to happen. Brienne's hands were still outstretched. Walter's knuckles were white around the plates. His mouth opened. And in that suspended second, before his words cut through the summer air, I knew that whatever came next wasn't going to be a misunderstanding. It was going to be a line I couldn't walk back over. Walter's words tore through the yard with the clean, merciless slice of a blade. "Food is for family members only." Everything and everyone froze. Carson stopped mid-bounce. Fiona clutched her plate. Even the grill seemed to quiet, as though the air itself recoiled. Brienne's hands dropped to her sides, slowly, like the strings had been cut. Her little chin trembled. She looked around, searching for the joke, the misunderstanding, the hidden camera. There wasn't one. "But I am family," she said softly, a small cracking sound in her voice. "I'm Brienne. I belong here. I'm a Hoffman." Walter didn't flinch. His eyes were cold and utterly certain. "No," he said, loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. "You're just some kid Clara felt sorry for. We don't feed strays at family events." The word stray rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Aunt Patricia gasped, dropping a serving spoon. Karen clamped a hand over her mouth. Philip stared at Walter as if seeing him for the first time in his life. No one moved, no one spoke, no one stepped forward. 62 relatives stood frozen, watching an 8-year-old child get carved out of her own family's history in real time. Not one person intervened. My mother's face drained of color, and she clutched the iced tea pitcher like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Brienne turned towards me. Her eyes were huge, glistening, panicked, as if she were drowning and didn't know which way was up. "Mommy," she whispered. That single word broke something inside me. It didn't burst. It snapped, clean and final, like a fracture you can't reset. I set down the pitcher I'd been holding. I didn't run. I walked, slowly, deliberately. Each step felt heavy, like the earth was pulling at my ankles. I could feel every relative's gaze tracking me, waiting to see if I would scream, fight, or collapse. I knelt down in front of Brienne, cupping her face gently in both hands. Her cheeks were hot with humiliation, her entire body trembling. "You know what?" I said, loud enough for every silent witness to hear, keeping my eyes on hers and not on the man behind me. This food probably isn't that good anyway. Her breath hitched. How about you and I go get ice cream? I continued. Just us. The really fun place with the giant cones. Her lip quivered. The double chocolate kind? With extra sprinkles, I said, and whipped cream. She swallowed hard. And a cherry? And a cherry, I whispered. I stood up, took her hand, and turned my back on the buffet line, on the silent crowd, and on my father, who was already shifting back into conversation as if he hadn't just detonated a child's sense of belonging, as if he hadn't just told my daughter, that she didn't deserve a plate at her own family table. We walked out of the yard. No one stopped us. No one called after us. No one apologized. The ice cream parlor was only 10 minutes away, but the ride felt endless. Brienne sat quietly in the back seat, shoes dangling over the edge, staring out the window. The sun had started to shift, casting long diagonal streaks across her face. "Mom," she said finally, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. "Why doesn't Grandpa think I'm real family?" I gripped the steering wheel so tightly the leather creaked. "You are real family," I said. "You are my daughter. The judge said it, I said it, and the people who love you know it." "But I have the same last name," she whispered. "I live with you. I moved here. I tried so hard." "Sweetheart," I forced my voice to stay steady. "Sometimes grown-ups are wrong. Very wrong. And when they hurt people who don't deserve it, it has nothing to do with the people they hurt. It's their fault, not yours." She didn't say another word, not even when the server handed her a towering cone smothered in chocolate and sprinkles. She stared at it, took a single lick, then set it aside. That night, after she cried herself to sleep in my arms, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold beside me. The house was silent, except for Brienne's occasional soft sniffling through the crack in her bedroom door. My phone buzzed constantly, family members calling, texting, offering excuses or silence disguised as apology. I ignored every single one. I had something more important to do, something precise, something strategic. I opened Facebook and searched for the Hoffman Family Reunion Group, 418 members, including relatives across several states, business contacts of my father, and longtime family friends. My sister managed it. Perfect. But before I posted anything, I needed evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable evidence. I called my cousin Renata. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was shaky. "Clara, I'm so sorry. I froze. I didn't say anything. I was horrified. I should have—" "Did anyone record it?" I asked. She inhaled sharply. "Yes. Devin was live streaming for his girlfriend. He caught the whole thing." "Send it." The video arrived minutes later. Full, clear audio. Walter's voice, sharp as steel. Brienne's tiny, "But I am family." The crowd's suffocating silence. Devin had even zoomed in on Walter's face, capturing every cruel muscle. Then I made another call, this one to my mother's sister, Meredith, the keeper of family history, old documents, stories people tried to forget. She answered immediately. "Clara, I heard what happened. I'm sick. That poor child." "Aunt Meredith, I need information about Walter, about his past." Another long silence, the kind that signals a buried secret clawing its way to the surface. "Clara," she said finally, voice slow, careful, heavy, "there's something you should know. Your father isn't a biological Hoffman." My hand went still on the mouse. "What?" "He was adopted into the family when he was 7. My mind spun. 7. The age when identity becomes fragile, when belonging becomes oxygen, when the wrong word can carve a scar deep enough to last a lifetime. The same age Brienne was when I adopted her." Aunt Meredith continued softly. "Some relatives called him a charity case, a pretender. They refused to acknowledge him at reunions. Your grandfather defended him tooth and nail. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Walter had once been the stray at the buffet, and now he had become the man holding the plates." "There's more," she said. "I'll send everything." Documents arrived one after another. Adoption papers, letters from my grandfather defending Walter, photos of young Walter alone at reunions before the family warmed to him. As I stared at the screen, a new thread of fury curled through me, sharper, deeper, fueled by betrayal on every level. My father didn't just hurt my daughter. He did it knowing exactly how it felt to be excluded. By 2 a.m., my table was covered with files and screenshots. But I wasn't done. I opened the Hoffman Family Trust bylaws. Adopted children were explicitly listed as full beneficiaries. Then I compared the scholarship records. Over $47,000 paid out in 3 years. None awarded to any of the adopted children in our extended family. Not one. Something else was missing too. $23,000 from the emergency fund. By dawn, the story had shifted. This wasn't just cruelty. This was theft. This was weaponized hypocrisy. This was a man using his own pain to justify hurting others. And I had everything I needed to expose it. By sunrise, I wasn't tired. I was vibrating, alive with a cold, precise focus that felt less like anger and more like clarity. The files were organized in a perfect chronology, each document a puzzle piece snapping into place. The adoption papers, the trust bylaws, the scholarship records, the emergency fund discrepancies, screenshots of Walter's smug Facebook posts about real bloodlines and keeping the family pure. At 8 a.m. sharp on Monday morning, I logged into the Hoffman Family Reunion group and clicked Create Post. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't waver. Brienne's cracked voice, "I belong here," echoed loud enough to steady me. I typed my caption, revised it 12 times, and attached every piece of proof. The final version wasn't emotional, dramatic, or vengeful. It read like a report, factual, clean, lethal. Then I hit post. What happened next spread through the family faster than smoke in a dry room. Comments appeared within seconds. Then dozens. Then hundreds. I kept scrolling as if watching a building collapse in slow motion. I had no idea. This is unforgivable. Walter said my adopted niece wasn't eligible for the scholarship. Now I know why. He took $5,000 from me last year for the kids. I want my money back. Brienne deserved better. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My mother's contact flashed across the screen. I let it vibrate into silence. Then Karen. Then Philip. Then numbers I didn't recognize. At 8:47 a.m., a message from Philip popped up with a photo attached. It was Walter's front porch and 2 uniformed police officers. "They're here with a warrant," Philip texted. "Mom is hysterical. He's yelling." Justice arrived faster than I expected. By 9:15 a.m., the Hoffman Family Trust attorney had emailed me personally, thanking me for the documentation and confirming that all accounts were frozen pending investigation. They CC'd the trustee board, several of whom immediately scheduled an emergency conference call for noon. Walter tried calling me at 10 o'clock a.m. I watched his name appear, then disappear when it went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the voicemail notification chimed. His voice was low, thick with fury. "You've destroyed this family, Clara. Destroyed me. All for some kid who isn't even yours. I hope you're happy." He still couldn't say her name. He couldn't say my granddaughter. He couldn't say I was wrong. At 10:30 a.m., Karen called. Unlike Walter, she sounded shaken, her voice thin, terrified. "Clara, I went through the trust statements. The $47,000 is just one part. There's another $23,000 missing from the emergency fund. Dad bought that boat last summer. He said business was still good at the bank." "He'd retired 2 years before," I replied. "I know," she whispered. "I know." At 11:20 a.m., someone leaked the story to the local newspaper's Facebook page. Prominent banker accused of stealing from family trust after denying food to adopted grandchild. Over 1,000 comments poured in. People were furious. People shared their own stories, adoption stories, discrimination stories. Strangers defended Brienne with more warmth than Walter had ever shown her. At noon, the family trust board convened. I didn't attend the call, but Uncle Theodore phoned me afterward, his voice cracking with emotion I'd never heard from him before. "It was unanimous," he said. "Walter is removed as treasurer, permanently. He's barred from having access to any family financial decisions, and he must pay full restitution." He paused. "There's more. We voted to establish a new fund, the Brienne Inclusion Fund, for adopted and foster children in the Hoffman family. Her name will be on every scholarship." I closed my eyes, took a breath. Brienne, who'd stood in line with her hands open, asking for nothing more than a plate of food, would now change the financial legacy of the entire family. Mid-afternoon, my mother finally got through to me. She didn't yell this time. She didn't defend him. She sounded small, broken. "Clara," she whispered, "I'm leaving him." The words hit like a slow-moving train. "I stood there yesterday and said nothing," she said. "I did nothing. I let him hurt her. I let him humiliate you. I can't stay with a man who treats a child that way." "Mom, you don't have to make decisions this quickly." "Yes, I do. I've made excuses for him for 35 years. No more." By 3 p.m., even the town was buzzing. Local gossip threads were flooded with people dissecting the story. The comments were ruthless. Steals from kids but calls others strays? The irony. "I hope he gets community service scrubbing floors." I'd feed Brienne a whole buffet myself. At 4 p.m., Walter was released on bail. At 5 p.m., the trust's emergency vote was finalized. At 6 p.m., Walter tried one more time to call me. I didn't answer. By 7:30, an attorney for the Hoffman Trust sent me a message confirming the official charges. Walter was going to have to pay back every cent he stole. He was also expected to face sentencing recommendations that included probation, restitution, and mandatory service at children's charities. The irony was palpable. That evening, as dusk settled and the sky turned lavender, a knock sounded at my door. When I opened it, Crown, Philip's teenage son, was standing there, awkward, lanky, holding his phone like it was fragile glass. "Aunt Clara," he said shyly, "I wanted you to know, the video? It's been shared more than 12,000 times. People are saying Brienne's the bravest kid they've ever seen." I had to blink hard to keep my eyes clear. "Thank you," I said, pulling him into a hug. It was strange. I had never felt less connected to Walter, and never more connected to everyone else. The fallout didn't settle. It reshaped everything. Within days, my father wasn't just under investigation. He had become a walking headline, a cautionary tale, the unwanted centerpiece of a public conversation about cruelty, hypocrisy, and the quiet power of children who refuse to shrink. But the most important transformation wasn't happening online. It was happening inside my family. 3 weeks after the reunion disaster, we held a redo gathering at the same property. Same tables, same barn, same old oak tree where the kids always played. The difference was unmistakable the moment we arrived. Walter wasn't there. His absence wasn't accidental or ambiguous. It had been voted on, an official disinvitation supported by 117 family members and opposed only by one, Walter himself, who apparently cast the lone vote that he should stay. Philip had taken over the grill again, but this time he walked directly to Brienne as we approached. He crouched to her eye level, smiled, and held out a plate piled high with her favorite foods: corn on the cob, potato salad, a burger with exactly one slice of cheese, and a big scoop of Aunt Patricia's baked beans. "Real family," he said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "is about love, not blood. And today, sweetheart, you get first pick of everything. If you want 2 pieces of cake, you get 2. You want 3? You got it." Brienne giggled, a sound that had been rare and small in the weeks after Walter's cruelty. She wore a new dress, covered in bright butterflies, her hair in 2 pigtails that Grandma Lorraine had braided so neatly, it looked like she used a ruler. Lorraine had moved in with us temporarily after filing for divorce. She couldn't fathom staying with a man who would harm a child and steal from his own relatives. She spent every day since then trying to rebuild the bond that had cracked when she stayed silent that afternoon at the reunion. Grandma helped Brienne make lemonade, teaching her how to squeeze the lemons just right so the juice didn't hit her eyes. Aunt Patricia brought her a plate of cookies just because. The kids ran around her shouting her name, pulling her into tag, insisting she join the sprinkler game. Everyone went out of their way to make sure she felt seen, not as pity, but as intention. They made sure there was no room left for doubt about whether she belonged. For the first time since the humiliation, Brienne's shoulders dropped. Her smile reached her eyes again. She wasn't looking around for Walter. She wasn't waiting for the next cruel word to land. She was simply a kid in the chaos of her family, laughing, sticky with lemonade, chasing water droplets, and not once glancing toward the barn door, checking if she was allowed to exist. On the legal front, things moved quickly. Walter had accepted a plea deal, 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service specifically at children's charities, and full restitution of the stolen $70,000. The judge didn't even hide her disgust. The man who had spent decades deciding who was worthy of a loan was now barred from managing so much as a charity bake sale. The Family Trust Board took further action. They created the Brienne Hoffman Inclusion Fund, named in honor of the little girl he had tried to erase. In just 3 weeks, relatives and strangers, moved by the story, furious at the injustice, donated over $30,000. 3 adopted kids in our extended family had already received scholarships for tutoring and summer programs. For the first time, the family legacy was being shaped by compassion instead of gatekeeping. Brienne's name sat at the top of every scholarship letter, but the most impactful moment came quietly, at home. One Sunday afternoon, we were in the kitchen, making cookies with my mother. The sunlight poured through the window, dusting the counter in gold, illuminating the bowl of cookie dough and the measuring cups scattered around it. Brienne stood on a little step stool so she could reach the bowl, her bracelet, engraved with Brienne Hoffman, Forever Family, sliding up and down her wrist with every stir. "Mom?" she said suddenly without looking up. "Yes, baby?" She kept stirring, quiet for a long moment. I knew he was going to be mean to me that day. The spatula slipped in my hand. "How did you know?" She shrugged, a heartbreaking little motion. "Because when people say real family, they usually mean not you. Some foster homes said that too, but..." She added a handful of chocolate chips, then turned toward me with a small, wise expression far too old for her age. "But now I know better." I set down the bowl and crouched beside her. "What do you know now?" "That real family shows up," she said. "Real family shares. Real family stands up for you when someone is cruel. Real family is Grandma Lorraine teaching me to bake. It's Uncle Philip lifting me on his shoulders. It's Cousin Devin making me a TikTok star. That's real family." My mother covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. Brienne fiddled with her bracelet. "Grandma told me Grandpa Walter was adopted too. Maybe he forgot how it felt to be treated like he didn't belong." "That was very mature of you to think about," I said softly, surprised by her empathy. She nodded. "But I still don't forgive him." She said it simply, firmly. "Understanding is not forgiving. He's a grown-up. He should know better." She was right. She was 8, and she was right. Understanding someone's pain doesn't excuse them for passing it on to innocent children. Since that day, Brienne hasn't mentioned Walter again. When people ask who her grandfather is, she talks about Grandpa Teddy, Uncle Theodore, who requested the title officially and now takes her fishing every Saturday. She starts 3rd grade next week. She's joining the school choir. She's practicing her introduction again, but this time there's no trace of doubt in her voice. She doesn't ask if she sounds like she belongs, because she finally knows she does. That night, while tucking her into bed, she said something that hit me harder than anything Walter ever did. "Mom," she murmured, half asleep, "I'm glad it happened." I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Why, sweetheart?" "Because now I know exactly who my real family is," she whispered, "and it's way bigger than I thought." She was already drifting off, but she lifted her head one last time. "Mom, tomorrow, can we make a thank you video for the people who shared our story? Devin said we're kind of famous." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and switched off the lamp. "Yes, baby," I whispered into the quiet. "Tomorrow." And that's the thing about standing up to bullies, especially when the bully shares your last name. It teaches your children that they're worth fighting for. It teaches the world what you're made of, and it shows everyone watching that sometimes family isn't who you're born to. It's who you choose, who chooses you back, and who shows up when it matters. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened, a kind of quiet healing that didn't look dramatic or cinematic, but lived in the small moments where Brienne's world slowly expanded instead of shrinking. For the first time since the reunion, she didn't flinch every time the phone rang. She didn't twist the hem of her shirt while asking if certain relatives still liked her. She didn't whisper the question that had haunted her on the car ride home from the reunion, "Why doesn't Grandpa think I'm real family?" Now she hummed while brushing her teeth, stuck little glitter stars on her school notebooks, and picked out her first day of 3rd grade outfit with an expression that could only be described as cautiously excited. Grandma Lorraine stayed with us, sleeping in the guest room that still smelled faintly of lavender detergent. She spent her days making up for years of silence in small, intentional ways, teaching Brienne how to fold towels hotel style, helping her learn new cookie recipes, showing her how to braid her own hair, and insisting she try all the fruits at the farmer's market just because taste buds deserve adventures too. What struck me most was how quickly Brienne attached herself to her grandmother, not with the fragile obedience she once showed foster families, but with genuine warmth. Every time Lorraine lifted a bowl for her or complimented her drawing, Brienne's shoulders settled a little more, as if finding a place to land she didn't know she needed. One evening, I caught her sitting on the couch with a stack of index cards, writing names in curly purple marker. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "I'm making a list of all the people in our real family now, like a family tree, but better." The top of the first card read, "People who show up." Underneath, in a mix of careful handwriting and tiny hearts, she listed me, Mom, Grandma Lorraine, Uncle Philip, Aunt Denise, Crown, Carson, Max, Danny, Aunt Patricia, Cousin Renata, Grandpa Teddy, and, this one nearly made my breath hitch, everyone who gave money to help other kids like me. The Brienne Inclusion Fund had grown to over $30,000. Donations came not only from relatives but from strangers who'd watched the video, read the article, or seen the story passed around online. Messages poured in from families who had adopted or been adopted themselves. One grandmother wrote, "Tell Brienne she is rewriting the word family for all of us." A foster parent sent a note saying, "Your daughter's courage gave my son the confidence to attend his first family gathering in years." A woman who had been denied a scholarship as a child because she wasn't blood donated $500 with a message, "Let her shine brighter than they ever let me." The prosecutor handling Walter's case sent me a brief update. He had officially accepted the plea deal. He would be doing community service at a children's nonprofit just 10 miles from his home. The irony was almost poetic. The man who once decided who deserved financial help would now be sorting donated clothes for the very children he claimed didn't count as family. My mother filed for divorce, citing financial misconduct and emotional cruelty. Walter tried calling me once more, but I blocked the number without listening. Some doors need to stay closed. One Saturday morning, Grandpa Teddy, formerly Uncle Theodore, knocked on our door, holding a box of fishing gear and a brand new pink tackle box with Brienne's name painted across the top. "Every kid needs a grandfather who teaches them something useful," he declared, "and since Walter forfeited that privilege, I'm stepping up." He meant it. He showed up every Saturday without fail, teaching her how to bait hooks, how to cast a line without smacking herself in the face, how to clean a fish, and, more importantly, how to sit still long enough to hear the water breathe. Brienne loved it. She'd come home smelling like lake water and sunshine, proudly holding up photos of her tiny catches as if they were trophy marlins. When the start of the school year approached, she surprised me by asking to participate in choir auditions. This from the same child who once hid behind me when someone said hello too loudly. She practiced her little warm-ups in the shower, belting out "la la la la" with exaggerated vibrato that made me laugh from the hallway. On the morning of auditions, she wore the butterfly bracelet and said, "I'm going to sing like Grandma Lorraine told me, like the whole world is listening, even if they're not." She got into the choir, of course. Her confidence had begun to bloom outward, the way flowers do when they finally trust the sunlight won't disappear. One night, while tucking her in, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes and said, "Mom, I think I want to make that thank you video tomorrow, for the people who helped me, for the ones who said nice things." I brushed a curl from her forehead and nodded. "We'll make it," I said, "and we'll make it good." Then she added, something softer, something that lodged itself deep in my chest. "Mom, I'm not scared anymore. If someone doesn't want me, it doesn't mean I don't belong. It just means they don't know what family really is." She paused, blinking slowly. "But I do." I didn't trust my voice, so I just pulled her close. Because she was right. She had learned, at 8 years old, what took many adults decades to understand. Family is not built through shared blood or shared last names. It's built through action, intention, and love that doesn't evaporate when things become uncomfortable. It's built by the people who stand by you when someone tries to make you small. After she drifted off to sleep, I stepped into the living room and glanced at the framed photo of our newly expanded family from the redo reunion. Brienne sat on Grandpa Teddy's shoulders, raising a cupcake in triumph, while the rest of us grinned beneath her. It struck me that this wasn't just a picture, it was a declaration, a new legacy, one that didn't involve gatekeeping, cruelty, or outdated ideas of purity. One that began with a little girl in a sunflower dress who dared to ask the world, "Do I belong here?" and who now had a chorus of people answering, "Yes, you always have." Her story had already touched thousands, but the most important part was what it taught her about herself, and what it taught me. That standing up to bullies, even when they share your last name, doesn't just expose them. It empowers your children. It shows them they're worth defending. It teaches them that love isn't passive, it's active, loud, and unafraid. Brienne is thriving now. She carries herself like a kid who knows she isn't alone, who knows she is wanted, cherished, chosen. And as for Walter, his legacy now serves as a warning. Not to her, not to me, but to anyone who believes that family is a gate they get to guard with cruelty. His story ended where hers began. And hers? Hers is just getting started.